you so much, Shubi, for that tour de force. We've got another tour de force coming, of course, and this is Lucia Dedear, who is, as it says on the slide, a daughter and an unpaid carer. I'm really pleased that she's got a capital C for carer, because that really stresses how important this is, for her father with vascular dementia. And in setting the scene, we very much wanted to have the very big picture, even the spatial picture that Shubi just showed, and then perhaps an account about what it really feels like to be at the centre of dementia care. And Lucia is kindly offered to come and talk to us this afternoon to set the scene. Thank you.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here. I hope you can hear me. And keeping in the vein of Eurovision, I think Italy should have won. Austria, of course, Italy did win Eurovision in 1958 with Vola de I'd like to think I accepted to come and speak to humanise all the statistics that you've just heard. It's wonderful knowing that there are, what did we hear, 34 million people worldwide with dementia. But I think sometimes we focus so much on the condition that we forget that there are actually human beings who have got the condition, and then there are people like myself who are also impacted by dementia. So I just wanted to share how I and my family, is it just press down? Yes. So here is the face of dementia and the impact of vascular. My father was diagnosed with vascular dementia, which I understand is the second most diagnosed after Alzheimer's. And sadly, there is no magic pill for vascular dementia. You just have to follow its progressing passage. So as you can see, I won't go all of it, but for me it was a huge impact on me and my family. We were having an idyllic lifestyle in Australia until my mother passed away in 2005, and that's basically when I became a long distance carer, you could say. My father, who we thought was an independent person, was able to look after himself, basically fell apart. And after the funeral, he did come back to Australia with me. He came back. He ended up sadly being a flood victim in 2007 because he lives in Gloucester. So I came back from Australia to help him. He came back to England from Australia. Then he came back to Australia with me while the house was being refurbished. He returned at the beginning of 2008, and that's when things started to fall apart. I would suddenly get phone calls at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, when my father had always known the time differences between the UK and Australia. And I would get silly things like, I don't understand this letter that I've received. So he would send it to me, and it would be a flyer for, just selling pizza or something, And in 2007, when I came back, when he was flooded, I did actually go and see his GP because I was a bit concerned even before then. And he was sent for a memory assessment. He was also sent for a CT scan, but they were inconclusive. So 2008, it kept going on. I kept getting these really wonderful phone calls that in the end, I sat my family down, my husband, who is Australian, and my daughter, and I said, I think I need to go back because I couldn't cope. I was working full time. My daughter also, she had special needs because she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in 2004. And my husband and I were still kind of coping with that. And it was all getting too much because my father would ring me and then I'd have to sort out. One of the times he rang me, I ended up calling Adult Social Services from Australia to organise Meals on Wheels for him. So we sat down and we came back in December 2008. My husband came with us, but then he returned back to Australia because, of course, he still had a job, we had a house, and we had a cat. So we couldn't just sell up just like that and return. So my daughter and I came here. And I won't go through them all, but basically those are some of the things that affected us. Obviously, for me, it was loss of a full-time position as a teacher, and I really didn't know what I was letting myself in for, because my father wasn't diagnosed with dementia until 2009. So when I first arrived in December, of course, it was winter, the house was damp, it wasn't very well looked after, and I was actually shocked because my father had lost a lot of weight, and he was very, very depressed. And basically, he more or less, the first thing he said when I walked into the home with my family was, I don't want to live. because of course he'd said, well, he'd been through his wife's passing away, he'd been through the flooding, and my father had always been what I call a Peter Pan of the world. He loved telling stories, he loved being with his grandchildren. My brother, who lives in Canada, has got 2 children. Loved telling stories. He was La dolce vita was his lifestyle. It was his motto was live for now, and that's always stuck with me. Now it's really interesting because I've been involved with carer issues, and I've become a care ambassador for Carers UK, and I've been to lots of events, consultations about a variety of things, whether it's dementia, whether it's care issues, dealing with my local mental health provider, and I keep hearing about the map of medicine, pathway for this, pathway for that. So I decided I would create my own pathway for the carer and the cared for. So this is sort of our journey. I won't go through it. And along the journey, what was wonderful for me was that my father's GP was great. Maybe because he was Australian. And the reason I say that is I remember one time I rang his GP from Australia and said, I've just had a phone call from my father and he thinks he's had a stroke, and I couldn't convince my father to ring up. So I said, look, do you mind going to visit him? And he did. And he then rang me up and said, your dad's okay, but he's not looking after himself. Doesn't appear to be a lot of food in the house. Now that to me is amazing. Now that should be the norm for any GP. It shouldn't be an extraordinary GP. And even when I came back to England, he was very good. He kind of took care of me as well. He sort of put me in the right connection. So somewhere around about 2009, Dad was diagnosed with vascular dementia. But there was at one point, the community mental health nurse, they're not called that anymore now apparently, the community psychiatric nurses, I think. She was wonderful, and I was fortunate. I meet lots of other carers that say they are not as fortunate as I am. I must admit I've been fortunate in that the people that I have met, the community mental health nurse was wonderful, because she not only was there to support my father, but she gave me all the information that I needed as well. Things like attendance allowance for my father. Oh, and by the way, Lucia, here's information about your local care organisation that can help you complete that attendance allowance. Because can you imagine, I've been out of the UK for 23 years, even trying to open a bank account was amazing, and registering with the GP was even, amazing. It wasn't easy. And just getting back, I'd never had to deal with adult social services or anything like that while I was living here because I didn't need it. So something I had to resource all these services to help my father, and the community mental health nurse was fantastic. She had all that at hand. I'm hearing from other carers, there are other people that are not so good. The other thing was later on, my father at one point became incontinent, so I was desperate. I rang the district nurses, and they couldn't really help me. They said, well, you can come to the hospital and get some pads. And I went, well, I can't leave my father, I can't leave my daughter. It's okay, I'll leave it, I'll buy some tomorrow. What shocked me was the next day, his GP rang me up and said, oh, you rang the district nurses out of hours. Do you think you need help? And I went, yes, I think I finally do. And he then referred us to adult social care. Again, the first social worker that came was brilliant. She actually listened, she gave me the right help, the right advice. That didn't always happen. Now things were growing really great. Now the reason I've highlighted those yellow bits are because that's where I possibly came close to having my own breakdown. Sorry. And the reason for that was my daughter and I were going back to Australia because we were in the process of selling the house and coming back to Australia, coming back to the UK permanently, and then my husband was going to join us because he was about to retire. Now, what really brought me to a breakdown was that I contacted Adult Social Services and I said, I need to have my father to go into respite in a care home that he'd been in before and that had some care workers that spoke some Italian, because my father regressed into speaking Italian because of dementia. Now this is just about when the budget cuts started coming in and the government had only just come in, and they said, no, your father can't go there because my father needed to be subsidised. He paid some money towards the cost, but not all of them. And they said, no, he can't go there, he must go here. And I said, but why? He's got dementia. They know him where we want him to go. They've got a space. And they said, no, he's got to go here. And I thought, well, I can't go to Australia for a whole month, the other side of the world, leaving my father in a place where they didn't know anything about him. And when I mentioned about the Italian, they said, it's all right, we'll go and get an interpreter. But if my father's stressed and there, by the time you get an interpreter, what, an hour later? I just thought it's highly inappropriate. So anyway, I went, no. I said, I'm not going to do it. We decided to put my father in the care home. They knew him. They had care workers that spoke some Italian. And I went to Australia, and I came back and did what we had to do. So that's why I kind of showed that. My husband joined us in 2011, and he is amazing, my husband, because he actually helped with the care of his father-in-law. Not many people would do that. And I am fortunate my marriage is still hanging in there. Now, at about 2011, my father's dementia advanced quite a lot, to the point that although we had care workers to help us in the home, it just got too much, to be honest. And we were fortunate that we had, again, the right social worker that agreed for my father to go into St. Paul's residential home in Gloucester. I will rave about it. I've raved about it on CQC because it is one home that really cares about their residents. And I know I can leave my father. I'm here today knowing that he's well looked after. And they're the sort of people that, the thing I was looking at was, when it comes to end of life, if I can't be there to hold his hand, will somebody be there? And they definitely will. I know that because I've seen them doing it with others. And when Dad spent a couple of weeks in hospital, it's been 18 months ago, the care workers, some of them would actually go in and visit him in their own time. In their own time. And that for me is really important. Now, the other jargon I hear a lot about is the triangle of care and this co-production with carers. This is my version, okay? This is my version, the impact of vascular dementia. It is not a triangle which has got a tenuous connection. For me, it's more like a Venn diagram, because the impact of dementia affects everybody. Obviously, the person with the condition, my father, me and the rest of my family, and actually his friends. What I found really sad is that a lot of my father's friends don't bother to go and see him because they fear what they see. And in particular, one of my father's brothers, who has Parkinson's, he just finds it too upsetting to go and see his brother. So I kind of say, well, that's all right, don't worry about it. I understand. I understand. And obviously you've got the health and social care and third sector services. We're all connected. You can't pull us apart because obviously it's a cost factor. It's what support do I need as a carer? What does my father need? Now, just at the bottom there, those are some of the things that we carers need. Good information. I got it. I was lucky. And I was given good advice. Emotional support. Not only did I get that by going to carers forums, being part of Carers UK, but I was lucky that I had good neighbours and I had good friends that kept me going. And my husband, when he was in Australia, I quite often used to ring him up at 2 o'clock in the morning and I'd be crying down the phone, and he would try and support me the best that he could. Respite was the most important thing for my daughter and I can't leave my daughter out of this, because at times when I broke down, my 15-year-old daughter would give me a big hug and she'd say, "It's all right, Mum, you're doing a great job." And she used to quite often give me the break and she would look after her granddad. So sorry. And of course, I'm fortunate that I didn't need the financial support, because I had a husband who was working. I was able to still do some work as a supply teacher, but I know there are many carers out there who are struggling to cope. The one thing that all carers say is we want to be respected, valued and listened to as an expert. You know, what really upset me sometimes with some of the health and social care professionals was they would say to me, "This is what your father needs," and I'd say, "No, it's not. I know my father best. I know what he needs." And I've got at the bottom there, I don't know if you can quite see it, our class target is to listen carefully. I put that there because just last week I was teaching a year 3 class, and the teacher, that was their target. The target was our class target is to listen carefully. And I hear a lot of carers saying that's what they want, is to be listened to carefully, and not just listened to. I call it active listening, because we can listen, but then the health and care social professionals or whatever, they'll still say, we think this is what's best for you. Carers truly want to be listened to and be part of that partnership, part of that Venn diagram, which I call the true triangle of care. Just to let you know where my father's at the moment, well, on Monday, the speech and language therapist is going to visit him because he's got swallowing difficulties. So, well, once they can't eat, so we're kind of starting to, the downhill slide. And it's quite emotional. I can't explain the emotional roller coaster. I know that's a cliche, but that's what I and my family have been on. And what kept me going was the people who gave me the support along the way. Now, as the previous speaker, it's not all bad. There are some positive impacts of vascular dementia. It definitely has strengthened the family unit. As I said, it could have fallen apart. Spending time with my father, I haven't got that up there, but that's really important. For me, my father gave me a lot. And although some people go, wow, you gave up a lot, and I'm going, why not? He's my father. He invested a lot in me. Why shouldn't I be giving something back? And Italians, it's all about family. And I did. I managed to reconnect with my family in Italy, my brother in Canada, reconnected with friends in the UK. As I've already said, the support I've received from friends and neighbours. But for me, the bottom bit, probably can't see it too well, is I've learned new skills. I'm here to be involved in a wonderful programme, which I'm hoping is going to change things. And I've enjoyed volunteering. I've met some amazing people. And even I go and visit my father about 3-4 times a week at the home. And do you know what? The right care home is not depressing. It is not panorama. It is a wonderful place where you meet some wonderful people. And there's one lady there, she used to work at Bletchley. And some of these stories that some of these people have to tell you are amazing. And there was one gentleman there at the home, he thinks I work there, but every time he comes up to me and he says, what happens in the morning? And I know it off pat now what to say to him. 7:30, it's bath and breakfast. You'll go away and you'll come back and he'll ask you again. And it's all about humanising dementia. And some people say to me, but does your father recognise you? And I'm going, does it really matter? It doesn't. The fact is that he's my father. Whether he recognises me or not, he doesn't speak anymore. But I go there and it's the touchy stuff. We've got to be tactile with people with dementia. So I stroke him and I speak to him in Italian and tell him how bello he is and how bravo, and I play Italian music for him. It's the human touch. So the statistics are great, but I urge you to remember dementia is about humans and the people that are trying to support them. Thank you very much.